For prioritizing my work items, I use the analogy MoSCoW, where if you remove the letter O from the city MoSCoW, you are left with the acronym of MSCW, standing for must have, should have, could have, and would or won't have. And I assign each of these with a color code in Trello of green for must have, yellow for should have, orange for could have, and red for would or won't have. Must-have items are items that are critical to your project. For example, as I'm writing a course entitled Business and Data Analysis with SQL, covering SQL is obviously a critical item in this course. However, there are items in SQL that are probably not essential for performing data and business analysis, such as knowing how to implement database replication is probably out of scope for this course. So if a team member suggested such an item, I would probably mark this as a would or won't have. As it is just as important to record items you won't be working on, in the event that someone asks why we are not covering that item, then we can look back in our Kanban board for details as to why this was not included. Even though I've marked such an item as won't have, there is potential for such an item to be worked on at a later stage, possibly in a different course. Or if database replication did become relevant to data and business analysis, I could add this item back in. Typically, a team will be able to distinguish must-have project items from would or won't have project items. Moving on to should-have items, I would first consider how much time we have for our project. And after a review of requirements, if we have too many must-have items, then some of these will be reprioritized and moved into the should-have category. With regards to reporting, must-have items would be key performance indicators, and should-have items I would mark as secondary metrics. For example, with a sales dashboard, total units sold would be a KPI. While quarterly difference is related to units sold, this is probably not an essential metric that is required on every sales report. Unless you are producing a quarterly report, of course, then it would be an essential item. As you can see, what is critical is objective depending on who's asking the question. Finally, to could have items. I like to think of these as non-essential components, such as graphs in a report or color coding metrics. By all means, if you have time left at the end of your project, then add these in. But don't start your project with non-essential items and focus on the key deliverables. That is to say, there is no point in having a nice looking report or application if none of the data in the report is what your customer has asked for. So to summarize prioritization, first ask yourself how much time do we have for this project? Next, identify what are critical components to your project. That is, components that you must have in your project. And once you have identified your must-have items, everything else can be recorded as should, could, or won't have. Of course, when prioritizing requirements, make sure to prioritize with your customer in mind. And obviously, don't make any assumptions about what is critical and not critical for your project. If you are unsure of a requirement, then seek further clarification from the business owner. That's all for this section on how to prioritize requirements using the MoSCoW method.